All right, let's dive into an incredible story of a king who basically declared himself a god and the ancient prophecy that called out his spectacular fall. We're going to zoom in on just 3 verses from the book of Isaiah, but wow, do they paint a picture. It's all about absolute power, staggering pride, and a reversal of fortune so dramatic it still hits home thousands of years later.
So our story here is all about the king of Babylon, a ruler at the absolute tippy-top of human power. But this isn't a story about winning. No, it's about a jaw-dropping reversal of fortune. We're going to see how a man who literally saw himself as a god meets a very, very human end. It's a timeless lesson in hubris, laid out with some pretty chilling clarity.
Okay, so our journey starts with the final verdict, right? The ultimate consequence for a king whose pride, let's be real, knew no bounds. Isaiah chapter 14, verse 15 gets straight to the point. It delivers the punchline to the king's cosmic ambitions right from the get-go.
Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And there it is, short, sharp, and just final. You got to remember, just a few verses before this same king was boasting things like, I will ascend into heaven, I will be like the Most High. Well, this single line just slices right through all that arrogance. It's a prophecy that basically says, hey, despite all your self-worship, this is your final stop.
Now, it's really important we get the language here. The source material makes it clear that hell, or the pit, isn't just about some spiritual afterlife. It's referring to Sheol, which means the grave. So this symbolizes a complete and total fall from power, an irreversible plunge from this great height into, well, absolute nothingness. He's not just beaten, he's basically erased from his high and mighty status.
So the king has fallen. But the story, it doesn't just end there. Isaiah does something brilliant. He shifts the camera, so to speak. He moves from the king's fate to the reaction of the people who are left to see what's happened. So you have to wonder, how would a world that once trembled before this guy react to seeing him in the pit?
And that brings us to the second act of this little drama, which we find in verse 16. We go from the judgment itself to the pure astonishment of the people watching. I mean, these are the people from the nations he conquered, the ones who lived in fear of his power. And now they get to see him in his final state. The imagery here is just so powerful. They narrowly look at him, like they have to squint to peer really close because they just can't believe what they're seeing. The source describes this change as something so profound it seems next to impossible. And just listen to the tone of their question. Is this the man that made the earth tremble? It's not even mockery, it's just pure, unadulterated shock. The man they were terrified of is now an object of total disbelief. And this slide, wow, it just captures that stunning contrast perfectly, doesn't it? On one hand, you've got the king of Babylon, the ruler of the Golden Empire, a wonder of the ancient world that stood for 3 whole centuries. And on the other, what's left? A humbled, wretched figure, so diminished he's barely even recognizable. It's the ultimate demotion, from a world shaker to a cautionary tale you can barely even see. And now we get to the final piece of the prophecy, right here in verse 17. After the fall, after the shocked reaction, the text gives us the reason. This is the moral justification for this huge reversal, and it's delivered as a final verdict right from the mouths of the onlookers themselves.
This verse, it's framed like a rhetorical question, but let's call it what it is. It's a list of criminal charges. This is the final indictment against him, spelling out exactly why he deserved this fate. This wasn't some random accident, this is cosmic justice playing out. So the really crucial point is, his fall is a direct consequence of what he did.
And the charges are specific. First, he made the world as a wilderness. The source actually points to real historical events, like the absolute destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BC as a perfect example of this. Second charge, he opened not the house of his prisoners. This is talking about his refusal to free captive nations. For the people of Judah, this meant a 70-year captivity in Babylon. So, you see, these weren't abstract crimes. They were real policies that caused enormous suffering.
And so we're left with this powerful, 3-verse story about the arc of tyranny. A king who reached for the heavens, only to be brought down to the pit, stared at by his former subjects, and condemned by his own actions. It's an ancient but totally timeless reminder, isn't it? That power that just makes the world a wilderness and keeps people in chains, well, it ultimately consumes itself. The higher the climb of pride, the more devastating the fall into nothing.